Today I'm going to do a recording for a little beginner's class that I'm about to run about turning some small natural edge bowls. The wood is green beech that's been down about 6 months and it's about 120mm across. So the first thing is to refine the centre. So I've put a mark in the centre and I'm going to bring it up now to a spur drive. This is a crown drive with lots of teeth. But you can just use a 4-prong drive. If the bark is thick, then you need to clear out an area to make sure that there is a reasonable grip for the drive. I'm going to cut a tenon on the flat side because it's a natural edge bowl, but before you start to turn it, you need to make sure that the wings of the natural edge side are at right angles to the bedway. So a bit of adjustment as to where it sits in either the tailstock or the headstock drive means that you can get it so that the wings will be fairly even when you've actually turned it. So having measured up your tenon so you know how big it's going to be, I'm using a 1/2 inch spindle gouge now just to true up the base. I'm starting off using pull cuts to get the worst off and then backwards and forwards a bit just to smooth the base out. Then mark out the tenon and using the 1/2 inch spindle gouge just to define the edge of the tenon and remove some of the waste. I'm still using the 1/2 inch spindle gouge here because it's a nice robust tool and it's quite handy for doing pull cuts, and the fruit clears quite easily and the shavings get cleared out nicely. As the shape of the bowl is getting defined, I'm now moving to a push cut with the handle well down. This could be easier perhaps with the bowl gouge because this is a 35-degree angle, so it means the handle has to be well down, but again the spindle gouge is absolutely fine. If you want to retain the bark as you come up to the edge, you need to be careful to make sure it's a very nice slicing cut, or you need to come back with a push cut from the outside rim because it's very easy to pop the bark off. Remember, as you can see there, you are cutting air as you go towards the edge. At this point it would be best to sand and finish the outside because it's not so easy to get to it afterwards. So now mount it in the jaws, check that it's central, and then you're ready to hollow out. I'm using a 3/8 bowl gouge with sweatback grind. Initially I'm just taking some out of the centre just to make sure I know what I'm doing. The key point now is to turn from the rim down into the bowl and try to avoid having to go back after you've actually turned out the rim because it will get quite weak. As you get close to the rim, it's very important that you move the tool handle all the way around so that your bevel is following the profile of the outside of the bowl. You can go back to push cuts to hollow out the waste, but the approach cuts must be like a normal bowl. It must be such that the bevel is in line with the outside of the wood. And always remember, as you start to take the first cut, you are actually cutting fresh air, as you can see there. So gently does it, a little step at a time, just going down a little piece, step by step from the rim downwards. Now this is quite a small bowl, so it actually is harder than doing this on a big piece of wood because as you come around the corner, the bevel will tend to lift off if you're not careful. So this is ground with a 55-degree angle, which means it will get a reasonable way around the corner before the bevel starts to lift. To get deeper, move the tool rest round to maintain support for your gouge. Particularly as you go around that corner at the bottom, there's a tendency for the bevel to stop rubbing, as I've said, and you can get a catch if you're not careful at that point. As you get into the tricky area at the bottom, when you can't get bevel support, you can do a pull cut and come backwards with the bowl gouge, and you can pull out the material from the bottom. And you can also continue to travel with the push cut across the bottom. As the bevel is lifted off the wood, you end up with a sort of shear cut across without full bevel support. However, with this shape of bowl, there is a point that emerges when a scraper is your friend. So this is a negative rake scraper, freshly sharpened. The beech is quite soft because it's still fairly green, and you get some good shavings. You can go in now from the bottom and just reprofile the thickness to make sure you get a nice smooth transition. I'm not trying to turn this mega thin, about 5mm, but I am trying to see if I can get the side to be as even thickness as possible. I was getting a slight dome in the middle because of using the round nose scraper, so I've just flattened that off with the skew on the side as a sort of flat box scraper.
That'll teach me. Just knocked all the bark off. Oh well, my bad.
And then time for a sand up. You've got to be really careful with those wings, so I tend to use sanding sticks, just a bit of abranet with a slot in the end and some gaffer tape to hold it in place. Nothing fantastic, but it does avoid you putting your fingers in unless you absolutely have to, or unless the lathe itself is off. I do find though that rolling up a sheet of nyweb means that you've got something fairly stiff to push, and you can keep your fingers relatively well out of the way. But as you can see there, you can still bounce them off the fresh air and you can still do yourself a mischief. As you can see, I haven't got a perfectly uniform thickness all the way around, but it's still quite pleasing.
Okay, so jam chuck. This is just covered with a bit of old wetsuit material. Fits okay. Just so it doesn't slip anymore. Just put a bit of paper in there and then.
So with the tailstock brought up for some support, it's time now to dress off the bottom, either make a little detailed tenon if that's what you want, or a nice flat bottom. I'm using a 1/2-inch spindle gouge here. I swapped to a 3/8 for the final dressing at the bottom so I could get right into the tailstock and dress off the bottom completely. And then just a little bit of power sanding on the bottom to get rid of the final nub.
Just going to put a bit of oil on.
And I'm just rubbing the oil in with a bit of very fine